All right, this is pre-algebra. We are in chapter 14, lesson 5. Now, before we get into example 2, I want to explain what is called the distance formula. Now, the distance formula comes to us from the Pythagorean theorem. Now, I'm going to explain how we get this formula. I don't want you to get caught up on, I'm not going to remember how to do that. I'm just going to show you where the formula comes from, and then I'll show you how to use the formula. All right, so let's remember that the Pythagorean theorem says that a squared plus b squared equals c squared. All right, now, first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to move the c squared to the other side. All right, no particular reason. I just want it on the other side. Now, we know that if we have a right triangle, we can take the two legs, the measurement of the two legs, square them, add it together, and it will equal the square of the hypotenuse. Now, if I didn't want c squared, but I just wanted c, what would I need to do to turn c into c squared? I'm sorry, what would I need to do to turn c squared into a plain old c? Well, I would have to take the square root. All right, so if I take the square root here, then I would also need to take the square root on that side. So now what do we have? We have the square root of c squared. The radical and the exponent are inverse operations, and they're going to cancel each other out, and we'll end up with just c. So the hypotenuse is equal to the square root of the sum of the squares of the two legs. Now, how do we get the measure for A or the measure for B? Let's look at our picture here. We have a right triangle. And if I want to know the distance from here to here, okay, I'm not sure why that showed up. Okay, from here to here. If I want to know that distance, how would I find that distance? Well, if I had a piece of graph paper, I would take the number that corresponds with this point, and I would subtract the number that corresponds with that point. And that would give me a distance. And we're going to call that distance A. All right, so I'm going to, and then we know that if I square A, that's part of my Pythagorean theorem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this A with the procedure for finding that distance. So I take one of my horizontal values and I subtract the other horizontal value. That would give me A. And then if I take that and I put it into the formula, because A is squared, I'm going to need to square that. Now, how would I find this vertical distance? Okay, well, to find the distance from here to here, if I was on a piece of graph paper, I would take this vertical distance and subtract that point, that vertical number. And this number, take away that number, would give me this distance. And let's call that distance B. So B is we take one number from our vertical distance, our vertical point, and I subtract the number from the other vertical point. And that would be B. Now in our formula we have B squared, so I'm going to square that. Now, we know that A squared plus B squared equals C squared, so I'm going to have to add these together. And in order to find our regular C, I would have to take the square root of that. Now, when we're using the distance formula, okay, and what did we find? Because if I then took the c, if I worked out, well, we did this in 2 lessons already, right? We found that eventually to find c, we had to square root both sides, right? Well, we're looking for a distance. We're looking for a length, right? So that distance, when we're talking about trying to find this distance here, instead of calling it c, we call it d for distance. All right, so we'll just call this d. It means the same thing. It's the length of the hypotenuse. All right, this right here is called the distance formula. Now, if you did not understand a single thing that I said in this explanation, don't worry about it. Here's what you need to know. This is the distance formula. That's what you need to know. This is the distance formula. So when we are looking for the distance between 2 points on a piece of graph paper, we're going to plug the numbers into this formula, and we're going to simplify the whole thing, and we'll have our distance. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this video here, and with the next video, I'm going to use the distance formula to do example 2. All right, so come on back.